Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching the Hallowed Chambers, and my guest today is an honorable member in the House of Representatives representing Gombe Hong in Adamawa State Federal Constituency, and he is also the chairman of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs in the 9th National Assembly. His name is Honourable Buba Yusuf. It's good to have you on the program, sir.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So we understand that the National Assembly lawmakers are currently meeting with heads of ministries, departments and agencies for 2 weeks now to defend their budgets. Can you tell us so far, what has it been like?
Well, as you have said, this is the period for agencies, ministries and parastatals to come before the National Assembly to defend their budgets. One, the National Assembly is empowered by the Constitution to make laws and also to oversight these agencies of government to make sure that they keep or abide by the law. The money law, which is the appropriation of funds to these agencies by the National Assembly, is done annually. And before we pass a new budget, the agency or ministry have to tell us what they have done with the previous budget to make sure the monies are judiciously utilized for the good of Nigerians. And so the House Committee on Foreign Affairs was in session yesterday to receive the Minister of Foreign Affairs with his team and also other agencies and parastatals under the ministry.
And we understand that in his appearance, your committee rejected his budget. Can you tell us why that happened?
Yeah, just as like I said, our constitutional duty is to make sure that monies appropriated in the previous budget are utilized judiciously. But we found out that there are some infractions in the previous budgets, and so we have asked them to go and correct those infractions. One of those infractions is in the past, the missions or embassies all over the world, we have over 110, have to come back to the headquarters in Nigeria whenever they want to use their capital component of the budget to get approval. And the bottleneck is so much because they have to write, and then the headquarters will send officers to the missions. They will pay escorts, they will pay air tickets, and when they go there, they will accommodate them and so on. And sometimes when they come back, the approval never comes. So you will find some of these embassies having capital components of their budget for 5 years. Some of them applying for approvals for up to 5-7 years, they won't get. So that is why, if you are following the trends about what is happening with our missions all over the world, it has become disgraceful. You will find an ambassador's house leaking, deteriorated, no vehicles. Sometimes the vehicles break down in transit with our flag flying on it. And so the committee, in its wisdom, in 2022, came up with a new law in the Appropriation Act. And Mr. President graciously assented to the law. And what the law did was to empower the missions to be able to form their own tenders board and spend their capitals within a specific threshold, just like the other agencies, boards and parastatals, and executes the project of maintaining the properties of Nigeria out there, and then maybe their vehicles and so on. So the ministry refused to obey that law. They came back with a proposal for the law to be repealed. It wasn't. It was sent back during the budget amendment, and Mr. President assented to it again. And yet they refused to obey that law. We have written the ministry like 4 times. They refused. The Speaker of the House of Representatives invited the minister and his team to ask why they don't want to obey the law. Yet, whenever we write either the ministry or write the embassies to adhere to that law, there is always a counter letter through telex from the ministry headquarters to say that law should not be obeyed. That was why yesterday we picked them on that, and the minister said he wasn't aware. We brought out the telexes from the ministry that were communicated to these missions, and those letters, telex, were signed by either the permanent secretary or some senior directors in the ministry, and they did not argue it. So the second law that they have refused to obey is the issue where you have monies in the capital account of the missions for up to 5 years, 7 years. You know, and the law says that after every fiscal year, any money that is left in an account should be returned back to the federation account. Where that should not, that is not done, the agency or organization should write back to the National Assembly to seek for waiver. We have reminded the ministry to do that so that they will be spending those funds in line with the law. Several times they refuse to seek for waiver from the National Assembly, and they kept breaking that law. And thirdly, the other law that the ministry refused to adhere to is that the embassies were given approval by Mr. President to collect administrative charges from issuance of visas. And those administrative charges are supposed to help them to renovate their houses and also take care of some administrative issues. But you know, the law of Nigeria says you can't spend a penny of Nigerian money until it is appropriated. So yet they have been spending those money without appropriation. The committee have been writing the minister to do a budget of what they are expected to raise from those revenues generated internally and bring it to the National Assembly for appropriation. They refuse to. And so that means those monies are spent without appropriation. So these are the three major areas that we queried and asked the ministry to go back and correct those infractions before they will come back for their budget defense and presentation of the 2023 budget for all necessary approvals.
But from the defense put up by the minister by way of documents, perhaps if they are not able to meet up with the ultimatum, or I don't know if you've given them any form of ultimatum, is there any existing ultimatum? Because we understand that if their budget is not approved, that means there is no budget for them in 2023.
Yes, I think they will not joke with that, because refusing to obey the law is an offense that is punishable by the law of Nigeria. So if you are queried and you are advised to do the right thing, and maybe because of your personal interest, you are refusing to obey the law, I want to assure you that nobody, no Nigerian or any organization or any ministry or agency that is bigger than the law of Nigeria. So no individual can be bigger than the laws of Nigeria. So if they abide by the queries we have given them, fine. If they don't, the law will take its course.
So aside budget sessions like this, what else is your committee doing, and also the Parliament in its entirety? What is the House doing to check extra budgetary spendings by these government ministries, departments, and agencies?
Yes, that is one of our major duties, to oversight. We just came back from oversighting some of the missions just last week. Despite the fact that there are no funds, we and some members of my committee volunteered to sponsor ourselves to visit some of the missions so that we will see things for ourselves. So when we oversight, we look at their books and we see what is really going on. It is because of this very important function of oversight that we discovered that it is not well with our embassies all over the world.
So we understand that the minister has submitted some documents to you to prove in his defense. Have your committee looked through those documents?
Yes, you know, when we asked the minister to tell us why they just deliberately don't want to obey the laws, in these three instances. One is the issue of Section 10 of the Appropriation Act. This is the Appropriation Act. This is how it is. And Section 10 of the Appropriation Act says the missions and embassies shall constitute their tender board as in a parastatal standards board within the requisite threshold in compliance with the extant executive circular and the provisions of the Public Procurement Act. So this is what the law says. And this is the 2022 Appropriation Act as amended. And on the 18th of January, I wrote a letter to the minister reminding him to say, Minister, there is a law that you are not abiding with. Please write the missions and the embassies to make sure that these laws are obeyed. They abandoned the letter. They did not write the missions, and they did not reply us. And I wrote another letter on the 23rd. After reporting to Mr. Speaker, he directed we should write the missions directly informing them about these infractions of going against the provisions of the law. We wrote, and instead of getting a reply, the next day the ministry wrote a letter to the missions asking them not to comply with that law, that they are not comfortable with that law and they want the law repealed, so they are working on it. And they refused to. They wrote them. And then we now invited them, the speaker invited them. The night the speaker invited them, they wrote another letter asking the missions not to adhere to our letters, that they must seek for approval from the ministry and contradiction of the law. And then I also wrote them another letter still in January about the other law. This where they have monies in their capital for more than 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then that they should write the National Assembly to get waivers, because that is what the law says. If you don't return those monies to the Federation account, you have to get waiver from the National Assembly, which they ignored. They did not reply. And after that, recently in September, before the budget session, I wrote them again, reminding the minister that you are still not adhering to the law, because we have gone out to the embassies and things are still in bad shape, and you have some embassies that have monies in their capital account, and yet they cannot repair leaking roofs and damaged fences and other things in their embassy, because you have refused to obey the law. They always send telex to the embassies warning them not to adhere to the law. And this letter was received, you can see, acknowledged in September. So we have been putting them on several notice. And then the other aspect of the law, which we said they should adhere to, is this document they presented yesterday, which is not a complete document, where I wrote them in September. This letter I wrote in September to ask them to furnish us with monies that are in those amount of monies in the capital account, so that we can process and give them a waiver, so the embassies can utilize those funds. So that is the document they brought yesterday, which they've started using. They started the process, but they did not complete it, and they never communicated us. They never replied our letters until when we invited them, then they brought this document. But the two other infractions, because this one is not even complete, the two other infractions where they were asked to inform the embassies to start adhering to Section 10 of the Appropriation Act, they never brought any evidence to show us that they have communicated the embassies.
All right, let's talk politics. The court nullified the primary election of your governorship candidate in Adamawa State. This means that the APC may not be on the ballot in the 2023 general elections. How do you react to this?
No, I don't believe that because this is just the first stage of the court, the High Court level. The case is still in the appeal court, and we still have the third level, which is the Supreme Court. So I am sure the party will participate.
And how is it looking? Does the future seem bright for the presidential candidate?
You mean the APC presidential candidate? Yes. Well, we don't have a any strong competitor against the APC presidential candidate. If you do your political calculations very well, you will see that we don't have any major opposition as it is right now.
Okay, assuming what role would this case play in other elective positions?
Not at all, not at all. I am sure the appeal court, because there is a timeline for all pre-election cases. Just yesterday, I have seen that the judiciary have formed a special committee to make sure all these cases are done within the shortest possible time as required by the Electoral Act. So I'm sure all these cases will soon be over, and the APC will definitely be on the ballot as per the gubernatorial election in Adamawa State.
That is all we have time for on the program this week. Thank you for watching. I remain Jesu Adiri. See you next time.